So I'm going to show you how to make this motif. On its own, it's quite nice, but the magic happens when you add 4 or more motifs together. And then the corners where they converge, it creates almost a separate motif, almost like kind of a circular shape. It looks especially nice when you make loads of them. And you can really see this sort of secondary shape coming out. I think that actually stands out more than the actual square shape of the motif. So I think that's what's really attractive and unique about this particular motif. Hello, today I'm going to show you how to make this motif. I'm using 4-ply cotton yarn and a 3mm hook. We're going to start off with a slip knot loop on our hook. Then we're going to chain 6. And then we're going to join with a slip stitch into the first chain that we made. Joining to make a ring. Now we're going to chain 2 and make 15 half double crochets into that ring. So we're aiming for a total of 16 half double crochets. We've already got our chain 2, so we're going to do 15 more. This is a quick reminder of a half double. So you're going to yarn over, going to go into the ring, going to pull up a loop, you've got 3 on your hook, you're going to yarn over and you're going to draw off all 3. So that's a half double. And do 15. So the ring is it's not the kind of ring that closes up completely. It has a decorative hole in there. However, there's still a lot of stitches to fit into relatively small space. So just be aware that you may need to shunt your stitches around as you go, just to make sure you've got enough room. So by that I mean pushing them round the ring, clockwise round the ring. Also notice that I'm catching in my tail. It saves a job at the end to have to sew that in. So I'm just going to double check how many stitches I've got, counting my chain, remember. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and then I'm going to find my chain 2 of my beginning chain, and I'm going to join there with a slip stitch. Just going to spread the stitches out evenly. There I am. This is the end of round 1. I'm now ready to start round 2, which is treble crochets with a chain 2 space. So it's what I like to call the spokes. It's these long stitches and with a chain 2 space between them, which means we need to start off with the chain 6. Because the chain 6 represents 1 treble, which is chain 4, and then chain 2 for the chain 2 space. So just a quick reminder of what a treble is. It's 2 yarn overs, go into the next stitch, pull up a loop, then you've got 4 on your hook, yarn over, draw off 2, yarn over, draw off 2, yarn over, draw off the last 2. So that's the treble, and we're going to continue round, chain 2, treble into the next stitch. So I'm just coming up to the end of round 2. I've just counted my trebles. I've made sure that I've got 16, including counting this first chain at the beginning. I'm now ready to join the round, and I've remembered to do the last chain 2 space after the last treble. So I'm going to slip stitch into the 4th chain of my beginning chain 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. And remember, you treat the chain just like a normal stitch. So you're going through both of the loops that look like a V, the front loop and the back loop, and you're leaving the back ridge on the back of the hook. And you're grabbing the yarn, pulling it through, and then pulling it through the loop on your hook. And then you finished round 2. Now we're ready to start round 3. Round 3 is double crochets. So we're going to put 1 double crochet into each of the spokes, and then 3 double crochets into this chain 2 space. So the first stitch is a chain 3, which counts as a double crochet, and then we're going to put 3 double crochets into this chain 2 space. And a double crochet, just as a quick reminder, is yarn over into the space, grab the yarn from behind, pull up a loop, you've got 3 on your hook, yarn over, draw off 2, yarn over, draw off 2. So I need 2 more of those in there. And then a double crochet in the treble from the previous round. 3 in the next space. One in the next treble. And continue like that all the way around, and I'll meet you at the end. So here I am. I'm at the end of round 3, and I'm ready to join the round with a slip stitch join. So it's quite often difficult to tell exactly where you're meant to be going with this chain 3, because there's a lot going on there. Stitches get distorted, squashed and bent round corners, and often even experienced crocheters still struggle every time to find out a 3rd chain. So I always work backwards. I work from my first known proper stitch, so I know that that's my chain, and I know that's my first proper stitch. That's the post. That is the stitch that belongs, the top of the stitch, it belongs to that post. Therefore my chain 3 must be this next one along. And remember, I'm treating this chain exactly as if it was a normal stitch. So with a normal stitch you go through the front loop and through the back loop, and it's the same with the chain. You go through the front loop and through the back loop of the chain, making sure the back ridge is at the caught at the back. So for a slip stitch we're just going to grab the yarn, pull that through the chain, and then pull it through the loop on my hook. So that's the end of round 3. I'm ready to do round 4, and this is another double crochet round, but we start adding in some of this opening here with some chains. So we're going to start off with a chain 3, which counts as our first double crochet, and then we're going to make 12 double crochets because we want a total of 13 for each one of these sections. So I'm going to do 12. So a good reference point for just checking you've got the right number of stitches, as well as counting, of course. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13. That's how many we want, including our chain 3. And that basically starts and ends across 3 spokes. So we've got 3 spaces. So it starts on this spoke here, then we got 1, 2, 3, lines up with this 4th spoke. 1, 2, 3, 4. So just as a kind of guide, if you lose count halfway through and you're just sort of checking where you're at, that's where these double crochet sections are covering 4 spokes or 3 chain 2 spaces. So now we're going to start the chain section, and you're going to chain 10. But I'm going to give you a little tip, because we need to slip stitch into the 5th chain from the hook once we've done the 10. So this is how I like to do it. I like to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then I'm going to pinch that 5th one, so I'm almost completely covered it, and I'm just leaving the live loop, and then I do the next 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now, because I've got that pinched there, I know that the 5th chain from the hook is this one directly above my thumb to slip stitch into. And again, to slip stitch into that chain, you're treating it exactly like a normal stitch. You're going through both loops, but because of the chain is kind of vertical rather than horizontal, we're going into it from right to left. And then I tend to just fold it over the back when I'm doing a slip stitch. And then the next step of this is a chain 5. And you'll see that you've got a chain 5, and then a little ring made out of chain 5, and then another chain 5. So the next thing we're going to do is make another one of these 13 double crochet sections, but we've got to skip 3 stitches from the previous round. So we're going to skip 1, 2, 3. We're going to double crochet into this 4th stitch. Remember to yarn over first, and straight after you've done a chain, if you try and do a double crochet, what can happen is that the chain and the yarn, it all spins around the hook, and you lose control of the stitch, and sometimes that first stitch can be a little bit foreshortened because you've lost control. So a good tip is to keep it under control. Keep that yarn over and the loop on your hook under control with your index finger. So remember, we're doing 13 double crochets. I'm going to skip 3. 1, 2, 3 into this 4th one. Keep control. I'm going to do another 12 now. Seven, 8, 9, 10. And again, just have a quick check, make sure it matches up. The problem with counting in your head is that you can often go wrong, so I would always recommend not relying on counting in your head, and always checking to see how the stitches are matching up with how it should be. So here I can already see I think I'm a stitch short, so I'm just going to verify that. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, that's right, I need 13. One more in there. And now I'm going to do the next chain section. So remember, it's chain 10, but after 5 we're going to mark it off with our fingers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to pinch that. I'm going to chain 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to slip stitch in the 5th chain from my hook, which is directly above my thumb, so I don't need to bother counting. slip stitch into there, chain 5, going to do a double crochet, skipping 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, double crochet into there, keeping good control. Now I need another 12 along here, so continuing that pattern, 12 double crochets, chain 10, slip stitch into the 5th chain from the hook, chain 5, skip 3 double crochet, and I'll meet you at the end of the round. So I'm ready to do the last chain section. And then I'm going to join with a slip stitch into the 3rd chain. So this is quite easy to read, this one. 1, 2, 3, front loop, back loop, grab the yarn, put it through. So this is what it should look like at the end of round 4. You've got 4 sections with 13 double crochet. You've got these chain spaces, and you should have 4 chain 5 rings in each corner. Now we're ready to start round 5. So we're not quite in the right position here to start round 5, so we need to do a few slip stitches to get us into the right spot. And actually we need to do 3 slip stitches. So we're going to slip stitch into each of the next 3 double crochets, and the important bit about this is just to make sure you're not slip stitching too tightly, because it will distort the work. So you try and match the gauge of the previous round. Slip stitches do tend to be tighter than other stitches, so you're going to have to consciously make sure they're not too tight. And you can do that by making sure this live loop on your hook is relatively loose. So that's 2 and that's 3. So what we're trying to achieve is 3 skipped stitches here. So I've got that first stitch that I slip stitched it into at the end of the last round. I got 1 double crochet, 2 double crochet, so that's 3 in total there, and I've slip stitched into this 4th one, so that is the right spot to start. I got chain 3, counting as my first stitch, and then I need to do another 6 double crochet because I want to end up with 7. So 1 double crochet into each of the next 6 stitches. And the next section is we're going to be working into this ring, but we're also continuing with this the chain detail part of the motif, and this time it's a chain 6. And then into this ring we're going to crochet 12 half double crochets. And again, when you've just done a long chain like this and then you try to do a stitch, it can be quite easy to lose control of the stitch, because this chain can sometimes wrap itself around. So again, what I like to do is just to try and gain control of my yarn over with my finger, go into the stitch, pull up a loop, then I've got 3. And then at this point, with a half double and this long chain, I actually like to include the chain in my the hands that are holding the fabric. just to give it a bit more control and make sure this stitch doesn't become foreshortened. You might not need to do this, it just happens to be the way I crochet. Most stitches I crochet after a chain tend to be a bit short, so this method helps to prevent that. So I got 3 on my hook. I'm going to yarn over, and because it's a half double, I'm going to pull that through all 3 in one go. That's 1. Now I'm going to make another 11 in there because I need 12. So yarn over into the ring, grab the yarn from behind. I've got 3, yarn over, draw off all 3. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And again, there's quite a small space you're trying to get all these stitches into, so you can remember to shunt them round. And if you lose track of how many stitches you've made, counting half doubles can be a little bit tricky, because the very first half double we've made here, the top of the stitch actually falls so far to the right that it looks like a chain. So when you're counting how many you've done with these half doubles in this ring, you count that chain to the right there. We never actually work into that chain, even though it is part of the stitch, but in terms of making sure you've got the right stitch number, you count that one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 10, 11, 12. So it should look like that. Now we're going to chain 6. Then we're going to double crochet. So make sure you yarn over, and then you're going to skip 3 of the double crochets from the previous round. 1, 2, 3, and double crochet into the 4th stitch. We need 7 stitches, so I've done 1, I need another 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's make another corner, so it's chain 6, and 12 double crochet into that ring. So just a note about this ring, you can see that my chain is sort of curling and twisting. You really want to just get it into the position it wants to be in. So for example, there's no point picking it up and starting to crochet like that, because you've sort of twisted it round. So just kind of with your fingers, just see which way it actually wants to sit before you start crocheting into it. It will come instinctively after a while, but when you're working a new pattern, sometimes you're not quite sure of whether you're doing it the right way. So I thought I'd just mention that. So I'm going to put 12 half doubles into that ring. And again, yarn over, getting control of that because it will spin with a chain. Going into my ring, yarn over. Now I'm going to also get control of that ring with my fingers that are controlling the fabric. Yarn over, draw all 3, counts as 1. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so continue round like that. So you're going to do another chain 6, skip 3 double crochet, 7 double crochet, chain 6, 12 half double. You get the gist. So I'll meet you back at the end of this round. I'm just coming up to the end of round 5. I've done this last chain 6 section, and now I'm ready to slip stitch join into the 3rd chain of my beginning chain 3, which is here. And at the end of that round, your work should be looking like this. So you've got 7 double crochet, 4 7 double crochet sections. You've got 8 chain 6 spaces. You've got 12 half double crochet corners. So each of these corners has got 12 half double crochets. So that's what it should be looking like at the end of round 5. Now we're ready for round 6, which is the final round. And again, where we are starting this round, we're not quite in the right position, so we need to slip stitch along. So we need to slip stitch in 1 slip stitch into the next 2 stitches. Remember, try and keep it nice and loose so that it matches the gauge of the previous round. So slip stitch 1, slip stitch 2. Then we're going to chain 3 for our first stitch, and then 1 double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. We got another chain section, which is a chain 6 again. 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we're going to work this corner, which is we're going to put 2 half doubles into each of the next 5 stitches. So as I mentioned before, a half double is a bit of an odd stitch in terms of how it the stitch that the post equates to falls very far to the right. So we can see here that this first stitch, there's the post and the stitch is actually on the chain. So if we actually worked into that stitch, technically if we did it correctly, this motif would look a bit odd because it would be starting on the chain and it would make it look unsymmetrical. So that's why we actually just completely ignore that first stitch, which you probably would do anyway by accident. So we're going to do 2 half doubles into what is technically the second stitch, but for the sake of the video and for the sake of the fact that it is really the first proper stitch you can see, I'm just going to call it the first stitch. So we're going to put 2 into each of the next 5 stitches. 1, whoops, went off screen, into 2 into the second one, 2 into the third, 2 into the fourth, 2 into the fifth. Then we're going to make the tip of the corner, which is just a chain 3. We're going to skip 1 stitch and do the same on the other side that we've just done. So 2 half doubles into each of the remaining 5 once we've skipped 1. So skip that, and then 2 half double, 1, 2, 2 into the second, 2 into the third, 2 into the fourth, and 2 into the last stitch. So if we take a look at that, it creates this really nice, almost sort of Art Nouveau-y look, leaf or petal, whatever you want to call it, or even an arrowhead. And we kind of cheated a bit, as I said, because although there were 12 stitches from the previous round, we have only used 11 of them because we've ignored the first stitch because of the way it falls so far to the right, and it would have spoiled our symmetry. So now we're going to continue with a chain 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we're going to crochet into this next double crochet section. We're going to put 3 double crochets here, so this time we've got to skip 2 to make it symmetrical. So yarn over, skip 2, 1, 2, and double crochet 1 into each of the next 3 stitches, and that should leave you 2 empty stitches on this left hand side, which is correct. So again, let's make the next corner. Chain 6, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 2 half double crochets into the first proper discernible stitch. Sorry, I keep going out of camera shot. Should I do that again, just so you can see? Probably don't need to, but okay, I'll try not to go out of shot this time. So I've got my chain 6, I'm going to half double crochet into this first or second really stitch of my petal, half double, 2, 2 into the second, 2 into the third, 2 into the fourth, 2 into the fifth, chain 3 for the corner, skip 1 stitch, 2 into the first one, 2 into the second, 2 into the third, 2 into the fourth, 2 into the fifth. So continue around like that. So you'll do another chain 6, you'll skip 2, you'll do 3 double crochets, you'll chain 6, you'll put 2 half doubles in each of the half doubles, you'll do a chain 3, then you'll skip 1 half double, and then you'll put 2 half doubles into the remaining 5. You're going to carry on like that all the way round, and I'll meet you back at the end of this last round. So here I am at the end of round 6, and I'm going to finish off with a slip stitch join into the third chain of my beginning chain 3. I'm going to cut off the yarn, leaving enough to sew in. So I don't tend to leave a lot because this when you actually fasten off at the end of one of these slip stitches, so you cut the yarn and you fasten off by pulling the tail through the live loop and pulling it tight. That's not really going to go anywhere. So with this, when you're sewing in the end, you're not really sewing in the end to secure it. What you're doing is you're just sewing in the end to conceal it. And if you're after a while, you'll I like to just make sure the tail is reasonably short so that I'm not wasting loads of yarn. I've got a tutorial on my YouTube channel with a few tips on sewing in short ends and stuff, so you might want to watch that. So at the end of round 6, your motif should look like this.